give a warm welcome to the hosts of the Bride of Alternate Ending.
Let's knock this puppy out.
Let's knock this puppy out.
Yeah, baby! Hello, and welcome back to Bride of Alternate Ending. Ghouls and Goblins, that is you. I, on the other hand, am Brennan Klein. I was really trying to, because I was like, Tim said something really funny, so maybe I'll just include that at the beginning of the recording. And I was like, I'll just really smoothly go into the intro, which I fucked up. So
It was anti-smooth. I almost was wondering if you were, doing a vocal exercise before you actually started the recording.
Yeah,
I think you've promised the listeners that you're going to include the pre-show. I think we should include the pre-show.
Yeah, we should.
Because then, I believe you characterized what I said as funny. I don't think that's accurate. I think it was kind of corny and bad, but...
Well, I think, okay, so here's the thing. When you make a pun and people always groan and they're like, oh, that was so bad, but there's a reason... That's part of the dance of what a pun is, but everyone likes it. I think it counts as funny.
That's fair. Now, this is certainly the reason why I say the Mr. Peabody cartoon remains beloved.
I have no idea what that is.
It's this is a weird tangent for us to get started to this episode, but
yeah, I haven't even said your name yet. This is Tim Brayton, by the way.
Hi, you all know who I am. I'm the guy who talks about 50s animation in the middle of podcasts about erotic thrillers.
Oh wait, he hangs out with Sherman, right?
Yeah, it's Peabody and Sherman.
Got it.
Peabody
Okay,
is
I've heard
the
that.
super intelligent dog with a time machine, and he and his human pet Sherman travel around in time, encounter famous people, Cleopatra, King Arthur, that sort of thing. And then the episode ends with the worst puns. That's sort of the game of the episode, is how bad will the pun be? And it's very delightful. It's J. Ward Productions. It's part of the Rocky and Bullwinkle show from the 50s and 60s. So good shit if you haven't seen it.
I have not. I gotta look into it because my only familiarity with the title is watching the trailer for the movie that they made in the early 2000s, and thinking, well, that can't be good, probably.
I mean, the movie's actually from the mid 2010s, believe it or not.
Was it the mid? Could it have been? God. So it must have been really bad, right?
It's not good.
Okay.
It's
anyway.
Very middle tier DreamWorks.
That sounds about right. But speaking of not good, we are kicking off our Oscars Skeletons Month. We are digging up the horror films that were made by people before they were nominated for Oscars in 2023. As voted by the Patreons, we are first, we're scoping out the closet of Ana de Armas. We're moving aside the Marilyn Monroe wigs and pulling out the 2015 Eli Roth quote-unquote erotic, quote-unquote thriller, Knock Knock.
I appreciate not only that you put those words in quotes, but you gave them each their own quotes, because I feel like that is necessary.
Yeah, they're very distinct, they're very separate, and they're equally...
The ways in which it is not erotic and the ways in which it is not a thriller do not always overlap. No,
not at all. But it's fascinating as a study and not as anything to watch. This is evidently a remake of a 1977 film called Death Game. Is that a film you're aware of?
It is not a film I'm aware of. So I started, watching Knock Knock. I pulled it up on Amazon. And while it was going on, I saw that Sandra Locke was credited as an executive producer. And I was like, well, that's a very strange thing for her to be credited as. So I just decided to quickly, while I was sitting there, break open my phone, and this is how I discovered that Sandra Locke was in fact a star of the either 1977 or 1979 film. Now I'm drawing a blank. Death Game.
77, yeah.
77.
Same year as Star Wars.
Same year as Star Wars. So I started reading up on that. Ended up doing a lot of reading about things that weren't Knock Knock while Knock Knock was playing, because Knock Knock is very boring.
It's very boring. It's the most
spoiler alert. This is a boring goddamn movie.
Yeah, it's the most bland, functional filmmaking you will ever come across. It's just like a TV movie of the week that they would Lifetime would look at, and they'd look at a couple scenes and be like, "Oh, that's a little quote unquote extreme, but not enough for us, probably."
And this is the thing. Imagine whatever you believe to be the most theoretically boring level possible that can be reached by a film in which you see Ana de Armas' tits, this is still more boring than that.
Yeah, very much. It's not okay. But anyway, so it's a remake of 1977's Death Game. They've got one of the original stars, executive producer, I think the director of the original's producing also, and you get a little cameo from Colleen Camp, who was in the original. And so this is Keanu Reeves plays Evan, a loving father. You can tell he's a loving father because he plays monster with his children.
He plays monster with his children so hard that he can't code switch out of playing monster when he's trying to have sex with his wife.
Which I kind of like that.
There's a degree of like only someone who is in a truly happy, solid relationship would do something this goddamn stupid with their partner. And
yes.
I think there's honesty there.
Yes, that feels right to me. And it's like you don't really have, you know that they're going to want to have sex with you because you have a like healthy sexual relationship, so you can kind of just fuck around, and it's not like you're trying too hard to seduce them. He's just being a monster. But yeah, no, good dads in movies play monster with their kids, so that's what he's gonna do here. But guess what? Okay, so actually, this movie exists in some sort of black hole of time that I don't understand. So it is Father's Day. We open on Father's Day morning. The kids rush in. They interrupt Keanu Reeves having sex with his wife, who's played by someone. I didn't write her name down. She's not in it very much.
Her name is Ignacia Alamand.
Okay, great. Yes, her. And this film, I mean, there's a lot of Latinx cast members in this because it's actually filmed in...
There's a reason for that. Oh, yes, you know the
reason. It was filmed in Santiago in Chile. And so basically, Keanu Reeves is home alone because the kids and the mom leave for a beach trip on Father's Day, which is also a holiday weekend. Which I don't know if that's how it works in Chile. It's not set in Chile.
No, it's expressly set in the Hollywood Hills.
Yes. And I looked up if Chilean Father's Day is any different because I was like, maybe that's just something that they were not thinking about, and it's not. It's also on a Sunday.
I was not aware that there was a Father's Day outside of the Anglosphere, so that's news to me, actually. I think there's an alternative Father's Day in a couple different countries. I'm not sure which. When I was looking it up, there seems to be there is an amount of people who celebrate Father's Day in Chile. I don't know if it's like an actual thing. Okay.
But sorry, I'm kind of bouncing all over the place, but I think part of the reason that this is filming there is that I believe Eli Roth was just off of The Green Inferno, which he had just worked on in South America, and the star of that film, Lorenza Izzo, is also in this. She is Chilean, and I believe they had gotten married either shortly before the production of this or like kind of around that time because they were married from 2014 through 2019.
Yeah, they got married in 2014. This film comes out in 2015, which in theory means they married near the production of this film.
Yeah. So it just feels very much like it's almost like a honeymoon film, like David Arquette and Courtney Cox doing that Scream sequel after they got married.
Indeed. Or that Scream sequel after they got divorced.
Yeah, that was a fun one too.
That was.
But anyway, so that's why I was like, maybe, he's married to a Chilean, they're doing Chilean Father's Day, but it's like, no, it's still a Sunday and not a holiday weekend. And also, the idea is that I think this goes from Sunday through Tuesday as far as timeline goes,
that
like
sounds
early
correct,
Tuesday
yes.
morning.
That's correct.
And then I guess maybe they come home either Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning, but it doesn't make sense. Because they're like, well, the whole neighborhood's empty for the holiday weekend. And I'm like, it's Sunday, Father's Day. No, that doesn't make any sense. It's not Krampus, where the entire neighborhood is away for Christmas.
It's one of those famous 5-day weekends in the middle of June. Roll with it.
Yeah, that we all love. But anyway, Keanu is home alone because he's doing work as an architect where he's like 3D printing a house.
Is that what? Is that sure? I was a little bit lost, and admittedly, I was at this point reading the Wikipedia page for Death Game, but When the 3D printer happened, I kind of lost track of why he had a 3D printer, but thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, they talk about him being an architect, even though he mostly wants to brag about having been a DJ at one point.
Right.
A very bad DJ. Very, very bad. He shows off his skills, and in Ana de Armas, it is a credit to... She deserves an Oscar nomination for acting impressed at the auditory car crash that we hear when he's transitioning between two songs.
Mm-hmm.
Ew, it is grim. But anyway, so he's home alone. These two young women, Genesis, played by Lorenza Izzo, and Belle, played by Ana de Armas, show up. It's been raining. One of them left their phone at home. The other one's phone is wet. They're trying to get to a party, or so they say. And so they're like, "Can we please come in and use your phone? We need to." He calls them an Uber. The Uber's going to take 45 minutes because Father's Day weekend.
Exactly, up in the hills.
Mm-hmm. Famously impacted. Surge rates are through the roof. And basically there is this. There is a 20 to 30 minute sequence in which tension
that 45 that 45 minutes goes by in something unpleasantly close to real time.
Yeah. And it's like if this were a movie, tension would be building here, but it's just these scenes unfurling into the ether. It's
like, okay, just going to dive right into the questions this film raises. Eli Roth is not a good filmmaker. I think that is an uncontroversial claim to make. I think you could very easily argue he has made 0 good films. The thing he does, he makes thrillers. Mm-hmm. Cabin Fever's a thriller. Both Hostels are thrillers. Green Inferno's a thriller. So the thing that I do know he can do, even though I don't think he can tell stories, I don't think he can work with actors, I don't think he can create characters, I know that he knows mechanically how to generate thriller sequences. He's not doing that for the entire first, 40 minutes of Knock Knock. It's like, I don't even know if it's trying to be thrilling or if it's just wouldn't it be weird if these two sexy girls came in and started talking about being sexy in front of you and you're like, but I'm happily married. I was playing Monster with my kids and my wife earlier this very day. I don't want to talk to sexy girls. Mm-hmm. And it's just it just feels like you're watching Satan Tango. It just goes on and on and on. There's no end point. There's no rhythm. There's no sense that there's a shape to it. It's just are we just going to be trapped here for 3 hours listening to these girls try and fail to flirt with Keanu Reeves? Is that the plot of this movie?
Yeah, it seems very distinctly that the plan was to divide this movie into a first half that is about a kind of thrumming build of sexual tension, and then a second half that is about a build of tension. Mm-hmm. But it's just so flabby and unfocused and unable to build anything. And when we get to the tension bits, there's not an escalation to what happens. There's this up and down that's not so much a, we're giving you a big thing and then shrinking back to give you a break. It's just really, it doesn't know how to build on itself.
No, it's just well, we'll continue with the plot, but yes, no, you're correct, exactly.
Yeah, so it's just these lackadaisical scenes where these women are talking to him and clearly flirting with him. He shows off his horrible DJ skills, and then eventually they have sex in the shower, which good for you. It's just the wet, so uncomfortable.
They have, so the Uber comes. And the girls went to put on their... So it's pouring down rain. They took off their clothes. They've been wearing robes this whole time. So they were going to just quickly rinse off and dress in their now dry clothes. So the Uber comes. They don't come out. He goes in. They're both naked and covered in soap. And they're like, ooh, we're covered in soap. And then they start, rubbing his pants. And he just cannot deal with the pants rubbing. So even though we keep cross-cutting to insert shots of the photograph of his family, he eventually does,
he keeps in his bathroom.
He does in fact enter the shower stall, have shower sex. We see the Uber driver leave, followed by a shock cut to the shower sex, and then they have bed sex, and the bed sex is one of the most visually illegible sex scenes that I believe I have ever seen in a motion picture.
Elaborate, please. Like, what? So, what was your experience watching this? Because you'd seen this for the first time. This was my second time.
This is my first time watching this film. I am aware, given that the story requires this in order to develop, that there are 2 women and 1 man involved in the sex scene.
Uh-huh.
At any given point, I cannot tell you which of those 3 people is on camera, nor can I necessarily tell you which body part we are looking at. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it's just flesh. It's underlit, so all the flesh is kind of gray and murky. Occasionally you see a hand like slapping on the flesh, so I'm like, well, that was probably an ass cheek, even though it looked like it very easily could have been somebody's bicep. Mm-hmm. It's... it's a bad thriller, but it is a really just humiliatingly bad erotic thriller, I think, in that it just doesn't... It's nothing. Like, it's just images that don't seem to connect to anything, don't seem to correspond to bodies. There's no sexiness to it at all. There's not even, like, a sense of, like, taboo or transgression. It's just like, here's skin. Guess what skin it might be.
Yeah, this reference is for the real fans, but it's kind of like the opening credit sequence of A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, where it just keeps panning over just writhing flesh, and you're not really sure what you're looking at. And so yeah, that sequence is terrible. At least the shower sex sequence has a juvenile sense of what sexuality is, where it's like, well, boobs on glass is sex.
And that's the thing. It at least understands the shorthand of, if you see a steamy piece of glass and someone's hand is pressed against that steamy piece of glass, we've all seen Titanic. We know what's going on behind that glass.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, it's just it's illegible. It is not the kind of crescendo to, it's so clear the exact mechanics of how this screenplay is supposed to work that the lack of filmmaking or aesthetic drive that it has is really driven home to a really sharp point.
Right, because it's like, it is very obvious what's going on is that the first 40-ish minutes, 45 minutes, are meant to sort of be winding Keanu up over and over again, whatever the hell his name is, Evan. He's meant to get wound up and wound up and wound up and wound up, and just the more that these nubile young things keep talking about, like, how much they like having sex and how much they party and whatever they're talking about, he's meant to, like, be under this constant, like, increasingly strain, like, we're meant to understand that he's, like, as the evening's going along, he's finding it harder and harder and harder not to just want to give into his animal lusts. As staged, and also as played by Keanu Reeves, I mean, I don't think we can entirely say this is just about Eli Roth's total incapacity as a filmmaker, although that's obviously part of it. Mm-hmm. That entire first chunk of the movie, he just feels sort of embarrassed. Like, these girls are making fools of themselves, and he's just too gosh darn polite to like tell them that they're making fools of themselves. I get no sense at all that he's like trying to resist his urges, right up until he walks into the bathroom and all of a sudden they're like rubbing his crotch through his pants.
Yeah,
it's like, how did we get here from there?
Yeah, and you brought up something I want to talk about, but I think I'll put a pin in it just so we can get through the remainder of the plot, which there is not much of. It then becomes it's clear that they're like kind of doing a promising young woman thing where they're trying to seduce married men and then punish them if they do sleep with them, and their punishment takes the most lackadaisical, circuitous, unmotivated route that it's somewhere less than thrilling for sure. But basically, there are moments where like he drives them home, but then they come back. So so he wakes up. They're just kind of like acting like children and taking over his house and making a big mess.
Mm-hmm. Like it's one of those, like, the kids have gotten into the kitchen to make breakfast for mommy on Mother's Day, and oh no, the kitchen looks like a bomb exploded. It's like one of those gags.
Yeah, which is a choice. And then so I guess the first half of it is just them being crazy and making a mess and fucking shit up. And like his wife has FaceTimed him, and they're like trying to press their boobs against the glass while he's talking to her outside. More boob glass. Lots of that going on.
Yeah, also some ass glass in that sequence.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Boob glass and ass glass.
Wonderful. Just we're covering the whole gamut. But then he drives them home, and they just kind of show up again, and they're like, "We've been spying on you this whole time, and we're going to tie you to a chair and play loud music and give you a haircut." It's just...
Which the haircut's a kind of a callback, because the first thing the wife does is like joke about how he needs to get his haircut.
No, that's true, but I just think that should have happened immediately after they tied him up, before they start like actually hurting him.
Yeah, no, that tracks.
Because it's one of the last things they do before the like big finale, and it's just like, oh, okay.
Well,
okay,
again, because it's a callback, and I think Eli Roth comprehends. The point of callbacks is that they structure, so you use them like parentheses. You begin with it and you end with it, without really realizing that there's also such a thing as escalation.
Yeah.
And that's really what this film has a problem with. Is it spends that entire first 45 minutes as a quote-unquote erotic thriller, where there's just no sense at all of there being like danger from these girls. They're just like baffling idiots, and like obviously
Yes.
there's something going on. Like, it wouldn't be a movie if it was just these two weird girls who like wandered in. It would be a pornographic movie. It wouldn't be a thriller.
Yeah.
So like, we clearly get that they're being disingenuous in that opening 45 minutes, but at the same time, it's not like there's any sense of like, we haven't lit a fuse. We're like fumbling around in the drawer looking for the matchbook while the dynamite is like sitting in a puddle of water getting wet. So when the second half rolls around and we need to like start seeing, oh no, their madness actually has a sharp, violent edge now. It's like he's trying to, his foundation is made out of sand. Like, he has no basis to start building off of that. So he just kind of like starts puking thriller sequences at the movie. He does them in the wrong order, as you know, we've just already kind of pointed out. Like, it goes from super tense, violent, whatever, down to like, and then we're going to cut your hair. It's just awful. It's bad. It's bad.
Yeah, and then there's these interludes of, you know, because again, like you were saying, that of the films that Eli Roth has made, of which most of them are, they're enjoyable to a certain type of person that I am not. But I think he has a proven track record of being able to be puerile and repulsive in his films. He has that very like frat bro juvenile sense of like, I'm gonna shock you and it's gonna be gross, and yeah.
The best thing Eli Roth has ever made, in my opinion, the best thing is the fake trailer for Thanksgiving in Grindhouse. And the best thing in the fake trailer for Thanksgiving is when a cheerleader is jumping up and down on a trampoline and the killer shoves a knife up so she lands vagina first on the knife. And that to me is the perfect encapsulation of like where his sensibilities lie.
Yes, exactly. And you get bits of that, like where the girls are like really, they've decided to really cross a line and really torture him. But it's just because it's just in the middle of this morass of nonsense. It's just gross and doesn't fit the rest of it because there's not enough of the gross thing that he's doing. Because everything else is so bland and boring. It's the recipe is all wrong. Because there's a sequence where it's like, so Ana de Armas puts on his daughter's like schoolgirl uniform and they force him to have sex with her while filming it, and then later they gag him with his daughter's panties, and it's like, those things are really extreme, right? And it's like, yeah, just for a film that otherwise has no sense of what would actually be shocking to the audience.
Right, and that's the thing. It's like, those are very charged moments, but because of the film in which they are contained and because of the lack of work the film has done to prepare us for that, the charge isn't even there. Like, this should be much more horrifying than it is, I think.
Yeah, that is true. Like, there's nothing other than... So it's another one of those things where it's like, on paper, it is shocking, and because of how shocking it is on paper, it does kind of bleed through in the film a little bit. But the film is not doing the work to emphasize maybe how Keanu is feeling about this, or just how gross and disturbing it is. It's just not doing any of it. But yeah, so to what you were saying earlier about how the script is not giving Keanu the right things to do, but Keanu is also not giving the script enough.
Keanu's performance is clearly the thing to talk about with this movie.
Yeah.
Because the movie is just not working. Keanu's performance is at least... The movie is not working because Eli Roth is lazy and bad. Keanu's performance is not working because Keanu is trying much, much, much too hard.
Yeah, I think the internet is very sensitive to litigating whether or not Keanu Reeves is a good actor. But I will say that I think that in the right hands and in the right role, Keanu delivers what he needs to deliver. Yep. And this is neither of those things for him. And yeah.
It's tough for me because, it's not a good performance. It's just not.
No.
It's not a bad performance the way that bad Keanu Reeves performances are bad. I'm trying to remember the name of that awful Before Sunrise riff with him and Winona Ryder as two guests at a wedding.
Wasn't it Destination Wedding?
Destination Wedding, thank you. That is a bad Keanu Reeves performance. He comes out, it feels like he's reading everything off of a cue card in a language that he doesn't speak as a native. Stilted, stiff, kind of just like these very uncomfortable looking body positions. This is Keanu Reeves giving a Nick Cage performance.
That's what I was going to say. Yes.
And it's hard for me to say this is bad because it's something. There's a lot of life in it, and that's not always something we get out of even enjoyable Keanu Reeves performances. The sense I get is that he was aware immediately that this was a misbegotten script and a project that was not going to work. So why bother taking it seriously? Why not just turn it into a big ol' ham sandwich?
Well, let me throw this at you, though, to deepen the mystery, which is that from what I was reading... So he is a producer on the film, which doesn't really mean anything, but from what I was reading, it seems like he was, more involved in the creation of it than just a regular, I'm starring in this movie.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd call it a passion project from what I was reading, but it seems like he was, part of developing it more than most stars would be, which is confusing.
And, I mean, this is that period when he is starting to, get into that, and then he kind of drifts back out of it by the end of the decade. But the sort of early to mid-2010s, he was doing a little bit more of that. Maybe the Nick Cage thing is right. Maybe he's maybe he has made the decision that he wants to begin the Nick Cage phase of his career, and he's going to use this movie to do it.
Yeah, maybe, because I will say the most Nick Cage element of his performance is also the best moment in the movie, which is it's a right on the bleeding edge between a best worst kind of moment, but it's that free pizza monologue in the third act.
How in God's name could you possibly like a scene better than the free pizza monologue? It's obviously the best thing in this movie.
Absolutely. It is this glorious chunk of nonsense. So did it... I want to hear about your experience again watching this film. This monologue comes at a point where you surely have checked out.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So how was your experience with that coming in? When it started, did you know you were in for something, or did it take a couple seconds?
The one thing about the film I knew, the literal only thing about the film I knew, other than the personnel, was that the people who found it to be a good time in its badness did so because of the quote-unquote free pizza monologue.
Okay.
So I knew that we had a monologue coming. I gathered it was going to be fairly late in the film. So when you can feel it warming up, I kind of knew what we were warming up for. And I will say the free pizza monologue, which is just this remarkably over-the-top piece of stupid symbolic writing that he then performs real big.
Oh, yeah.
Just so big. This is, again, part of the, is it fair to call this a bad performance? No other way of delivering that monologue would have suddenly magically made it work. and the way he does perform it revives my interest in the movie at a point when my interest has been flagging very, very hard. So, like,
Yeah.
is he not working to the film's benefit at this point? He's given the film a personality.
Well, is it possible for it to be a bad performance and the right performance at the same time?
I mean, I guess the question for me would become, it is the right performance. We know that. That is, I think, beyond dispute. Is he making the conscious choice, well, if I just go real stupid and loopy and big with this, it'll be funny and the audience will like it? I think that makes it a good performance. I think it becomes deliberate camp at that point. If he's just trying to put on his serious actor pants, then I think it is a bad performance that is the right performance.
Yeah. Well, we won't know. There's no way to know that. But it is. Sorry, yes?
No, go ahead.
I was just thinking, it is this glorious gem of 45 seconds that is just shoved into this movie that it becomes a shining beacon of light because of how low the rest of the movie is. And it might not stand out as much if the rest of the movie was better. But I'm not saying it's worth it to get to this monologue to slog through the movie.
Because, I mean, presumably this monologue exists on YouTube. I mean, I haven't checked, I don't know that. So
it does, and I recommend just watching that.
I will say, though, again, sort of in quasi-defense of Keanu, not as an argument that you should go see the film, the monologue does not come out of nowhere to me. His entire performance is overclocked. It's not like he's giving just kind of straightforward mumbling his way through the script, and then we get to this monologue, he snaps on, and all of a sudden he's like, going apeshit. Right from the beginning, that whole monster sequence, he's going for the monster thing. Like, he's doing a goofy voice, he's like doing goofy shit, and to a certain extent it's being sold by the movie as, he's just a good dad, he's really not embarrassed to be a goofball in front of his kids. But that is a vibe that's kind of our first impression of his performance, and it really lingers, I think, throughout a lot of what happens, especially in that first half, where he's like, just kind of confusedly trying to deal with these two girls flirting with him. And there are line deliveries, just completely innocuous lines in a way that I still got that kind of like overcooked Nick Caginess from. Like, there's a specific line where he offers one of the girls, I don't remember which one, an iPad. And the way he says, and here's your iPad. And, like, it's just big in a way that it does not need to be big. That does tell me, like, he's trying to, like, build us up to the monologue by having his performance be kind of full of these weird little loopy curly cues. Okay.
And okay, so that line, I think, is the right one to point to crack this performance, actually. Because there is that thing of when there are, kind of over-the-top people when you're in an uncomfortable situation where it's like, I need to ask someone to, I can't fucking think of anything. Or it's like, it's like, oh, my hand is on your butt accidentally because you sat on it. And then you go like, oh, excuse me, my hand seems to be here. Let me just move that. Like, you're so uncomfortable, you overplay it.
Sure.
And it seems like that's what he's doing, and maybe that's the instinct of that man, of Evan. And then that is what it turns into when he is put under duress. And I think that's fair, maybe.
Maybe. And I mean, that would imply that he has done character work.
Yeah, so great. Thankfully somebody tried. So, I mean, but yeah,
Again, the Keanu Reeves element of the film is at least watchable. It is not in any unironic sense good, but it is at least watchable, and that I don't believe to be true of any other element of this film.
No, and speaking of, let's turn our attention to the reason we're here, which is Ana de Armas. Do you see any glimmer of anything that she will become? Because, like, she is still a new actress. Like, Knives Out was kind of her breakout thing, but she was in Blade Runner 2049. She was nominated for playing Marilyn Monroe. She's not, like, I would say regarded as one of the world's greats quite yet, but like
she got a ton of notices for being far and away the best thing in a James Bond movie too. Let's not forget.
Oh, I forgot about. Yeah, she was great in that.
I haven't seen Blonde, but I would be inclined to say that No Time to Die was the best of her performances that I have seen. But that's.
Oh yeah.
This is tragically not a podcast about No Time to Die.
Very tragically. But yeah, are you seeing any glimmer of anything in this performance?
I I think the absolute best I can say, excuse me, between the two of them, I would have picked her to have a better career than whatever her name is.
Lorenza Izzo.
Lorenza Izzo. I don't think she's necessarily better at the technical skills required to do that thing we call acting, but I think she seems more comfortable in front of the camera.
That is true.
At a minimum.
And yes, and unlike Keanu Reeves, who's doing something weird with a character who is poorly written but a character, these girls are not characters.
They are not. They make no sense.
No, not at all.
Like, knowing where the film ends, they make no sense. Just seeing what the film is up until its midway point, they make no sense. Neither one of them is doing anything that I could perceive to foreshadow for me what's going to happen in the second half during the first half.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, because you could have, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is for that. But no, because they're doing this, like I said, they're doing the promising young woman kind of thing, but it is never clear why or who these people actually are, like what of anything that they've said is true, and not in a mysterious, like, oh, we will never understand them, they are the strangers kind of way. They're just these, I mean, I think it's probably part of Eli Roth's worldview that women are scary and incomprehensible, and thus I will write them as these hollow shells.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I would love to see the original version of this film from 1977. I feel like there is a lot about this scenario that makes more sense in the 1970s. Because the 1970s, so much of 1970s exploitation cinema is about male directors trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do with this new thing called women's lib. And that's at least something. This is just Eli Roth having this 100-minute "ooh, girls have cooties" thing.
Yeah.
For some very strange reason, casting his wife as one of the two lead women. Like, that's a fucking question mark to me. Is why has he decided, hey babe, I made a movie for you to be in? Like, where does that come from? Like, what does that tell us about their relationship, which, oh wow, ended in divorce after 5 years?
Shocking, yeah.
And just the complete hollowness, the complete lack of any sense that these women exist for any reason other than to be a sort of arbitrary destructive force. And like, it's not even like ragingly misogynist in a way that I'd at least be able to like get a handle on why the film is doing what it's doing. It's just like cartoon characters. It's like Screwball Squirrel with boobs. That's like, they just sweep in and they just cause mayhem because why not cause mayhem? And then they sweep out. And maybe if that's the pitch he was making this at, it would have worked, but he sure isn't. So
yeah, and they're just acting like children hopped up on sugar for the entire second half of this film, which is like, so there's this through line of they're trying to convince him that they're 15 and that he's committed statutory rape, which is one of the most unbelievable lies I've ever seen on film. Both in the fact that it's like, you are clearly like in your mid to late 20s, but also they're very clearly lying. Like, they're not hiding it very well.
Exactly.
But I was like, I guess that's why they're acting like this, but there's no nuance to it. It's just exhausting. It
is. And like, and you know, the thing you just reminded me about the statutory rape beat, it's just sort of the overall kind of formless one-note quality to these two characters, both as written and as performed. I hate to say, but as both. This film has no structure, like, at all.
No.
These scenes could be rearranged. Plot developments could be arranged. They could be taken out. And such an enormous quantity of this movie feels like it is just there to pad things out. I mean, like, we talked about this briefly. The morning after, so that about the 50-minute mark, Keanu takes the women back to wherever they came from, drops them off, goes home, and then they return. That is narratively empty. That's like the air inside a
yeah.
croissant. Like it's just there. You don't taste it. It doesn't have calories. It just sort of happens. Or earlier in the film, there's this completely spurious scene where Keanu's wife FaceTimes him to say that they're, at the beach or whatever. And it's like this 1.5 minute long scene that just doesn't exist. It's just stuff. And I will actually say, excuse me, I knew that Eli Roth's wife was in this film, but I did not know who she was. And
okay.
I thought for sure, until and again, I was reading the Wikipedia page for this and other things during the movie. When that all happened, I thought for sure.
How are staples made?
I mean, you're not that far off. I thought for sure that woman was his wife, because it's like, well, she's terrible. Like, she is a shockingly bad actress. And B, there's that second scene with her, which is like, this scene does not exist. If I'm the editor, the first thing I say is, hey, that scene with the wife on FaceTime, can we drop that? So I was like, did he just like shove an extra scene in so he could get more screen time for his wife? And then I find out that woman is not, in fact, his wife. She's just a really fucking lousy Chilean actress who showed up in this movie for some reason.
Yeah, no, it is. It's just another. This movie is just full of vestigial scenes and characters, or I mean, and there is the cameo from Colleen Camp, who I think is fun on screen, but is not established before or after, doesn't make any sense, and then just vanishes from the movie.
Also, well, I think it's cool that I mean, Roth's a Grindhouse fanboy. We know this. He loves old 70s movies that nobody's ever heard of. So I think it's cool that he loves Death Game so much that he's like, I'm going to get one of the stars of Death Game to cameo in my remake of Death Game. I don't think that Colleen Camp's name carries with it the kind of like, ooh, hey, that's Colleen Camp of like, I don't know, Jessica Harper or Linnea Quigley or something like that. It's just like, oh yes, Colleen Camp.
Yeah, she was Sharon Stone's friend in Sliver.
Yeah, like, okay. Yay. So like,
yep.
Even that kind of plays a little flat if you're not the person that Eli Roth is. Which, thanks be to Jesus, I am not.
Yeah, thank goodness. I wish he wasn't so hot, is the thing.
You and I don't have
like
the
him.
Same taste in men. That is all I would say about that.
That is fair. I would not like to be tarred with the brush of thinking that is my only taste in men.
I feel like when I look at Eli Roth, I always wonder how many days it's been since his last shower.
That is fair. I mean, I guess specifically him as the Bear Jew in Inglourious Bastards.
That is unquestionably peak Roth.
Yeah, so that is the vibe I'm talking about.
Okay.
But anyway, that's all I have to say about Knock Knock. It's not good.
I regret to say that is not all I have to say about Knock Knock.
Okay, hit me one more.
I want to dig into a couple more ways that this film is just a disaster. So I, in my reading, encountered that there are 3 separate endings to this story. There is the ending.
Oh.
There is the ending of Death Game. There is what Wikipedia refers to as an alternate ending, and I'm unsure where that alternate ending can be seen or by whom or under what context. And then there is the ending that I at least saw, which is just that the wife and kids come back, and one of the kids makes a stupid joke about how dad had a party. The end.
Yep.
So apparently, in the alternate ending for this film, the dog collar, they steal the dog, has GPS in it, and Keanu uses that to track them down. And the end of the alternate ending is him, like, he knocks on the door, they open it, and he says, knock, knock. And that's how that ends. In the 77 film, spoiler for a film neither one of us have seen, again, I was just Wikipediaing this whole goddamn time. It's a long 100 minutes. Yep. The girls almost cut the character's head off with a meat cleaver, and then they're like, haha, just kidding, we're not going to do that. We just are 2 wild girls, tee-hee. And then they walk off and start to cross the street and get run over by a truck and die. The end.
What?
So I would be inclined to say that either that incredibly out of nowhere truck death or the Keanu uses the dog's GPS to find them endings, at least both make me feel like this experience led up to something. Whereas the experience I had did not do that.
No, it's a real wet fart of an ending.
And
yeah, at least the knock knock thing would have been deliciously stupid. On the spectrum of the free pizza scene.
There's that, and there's also, I don't know at what point the alternate ending became an alternate ending, but the entire film, from very early on, from when the wife and kids are still in the house, keeps cutting to the dog. Like, it just keeps doing it and doing it and doing it. We get so many shots whose entire function is, remember there's the dog. Or, like, we get a shot of Keanu talking to the girls, and then it pans down, and, like, and there's the dog. And it keeps setting up the dog is going to matter. The dog is going to matter. And the dog doesn't matter.
Nope.
I was like, is the dog... I mean, initially, like, when it first happened, I was like, well, the dog's going to end up dead. Like, that's going to be the sort of, like, you know, Bunny and the stew pot thing that this movie's going to do. That doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Why are there so many shots of the dog? Why, Brennan?
I don't know. And the thing is, there's also not enough, because I kept forgetting the dog existed. So those shots did remind me.
That's what the shots had to remind you.
Yeah, because the dog's not in the movie.
The dog's not in the movie. The dog doesn't have a function. At least with the alternate ending, the dog has a function.
Yeah, wow. That's a bummer. No, I don't have an answer for you. I mean, it does reek of a studio note of, like, we can't do that for some reason, because, like, you know, we can't have a fun movie. Why would we put one out? I don't know. That just sucks. And what else? Did you have another thing you wanted to say?
No, those were my two things. My two things were the
got it.
presence of the endings, and then the more general question about why so much dog B-roll.
Yeah, and it's
how come she full of be?
It's oh my god. It's kind of one of those cute-ish French bulldogs with the big ears. So that's always, it's nice to see the ears.
I don't not like the dog. The dog is giving the second best performance in this movie.
Yeah, look, you gotta take the good things when you get them, because there's the shots of the dog, and also the Chilean song that he plays before he horribly smashes it. He treats this song like the end of the original film treats the main girls. But the song itself, which is Prenderemos Fuego al Cielo by Francisca Valenzuela, that's a good song. I liked that song.
It's a good song. What is done to it is bad, but it is good.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I'll enjoy this scene because it's got a nice song, and then everything else is just bullshit.
Exactly.
That's that on Knock Knock then. We're going to keep this train rolling in 2 weeks when we're digging up another skeleton out of a closet. Next time we're going to be talking about Angela Bassett. She was nominated for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, but we're going to talk about her 90s role in opposite Eddie Murphy in Wes Craven's Vampire in Brooklyn, which I'm very excited to talk about. Whether or not you will enjoy it is it's up in the air, let's say.
I mean,
but
our track record with me enjoying Wes Craven films on this podcast has not been terribly strong, but it's a Wes Craven film I haven't seen, so.
Yeah, it's a Wes Craven film you haven't seen, and it's one that I would say does not feel like a Wes Craven film, so that might help you. It probably won't, but we'll find out. But yeah, until then, you can find more of Tim's reviews and mine, more podcasts, more everything at alternateending.com. And yeah, I don't know. Have a good time. Have a good February.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
She hate me.